HowlSage, Sages of Darkness, Book 1. Written by Brock Eastman. Narrated by J.J. Battiston. Chapter 7, October 7th, Saturday. I woke at 7 a.m. without Ike jolting me awake. The construction of the Pink Hippo took place before the bathrooms and guest rooms were standard, so there were 2 bathrooms to each floor, one for men and one for women. Since I had the 5th floor to myself, the bathroom was by default private. There were advantages to living in a 7-story inn with 2 other families, the Swigerts on the 3rd floor and the Rileys on the 1st. When guests from other society chapters came, they stayed on the 4th or 6th floor. I didn't spend much time on my floor. I mainly used the space to sleep and wash up, but if I wanted to get away, I had a place to go. Sort of. It didn't stop Ike from invading whenever he wanted. I loved long showers, so I carefully covered my ankle with a plastic wrap. There was something about the warm water running on my face, the steam swirling around. It gave me clarity, helped me feel cleansed and refreshed. It also helped me forget. I dried off and undid the plastic from my ankle. Then I wrapped my towel around my waist and stepped into the thick layer of steam filling the room. I could barely see my reflection in the fogged mirror and wiped a swath dry with a hand towel. That was My brain sent a defensive message to my muscles before I even consciously knew what was happening. I jerked backward, ducked, rolled, and popped up 5 feet away from the threat. There, staring at me, was the furry beast, the creature I was hunting, the HowlSage. Armed with nothing more than a towel, I wasn't about to take that off to use it as a weapon. The demon brandished razor claws and dagger-like fangs. I dove for the hand towel I'd left by the sink. I made quick work of it, twisting it into a whip. It could work. A damp cloth could give a sharp snap. Fear flooded me. What was I thinking? A powerful snap. The towel wouldn't penetrate the demon's thick, matted coat. Dumb idea. I must escape. In terror, I glanced around for a better weapon. Finding nothing, I realized that I was going to have to make a run for it. Get to my room. Find a real weapon. Anything but a hand towel. Roar! Its furry head was in my face and on me before I could move. I grabbed the sides of its head and twisted. I'd seen the move done in action films a dozen times. The head came loose. I'd ripped it clean from its torso. Wait. Laughing? Through the steam stepped someone I was not expecting. A month had passed since I had seen my cousin at my dad's funeral. With straight black hair, dark tan skin, and at 6 feet 2, my cousin Jesse could easily pull off a HowlSage when shrouded by steam, especially since he was wearing brown jeans and a black thermal shirt. He looked at the twisted towel on the floor and started laughing even harder, grabbing hold of the nearby counter to brace himself as he howled uncontrollably. Maybe howl wasn't the right word to use in this circumstance, but either way, he was thrilled with the result of his prank. I scowled and picked up the fake werewolf head. I turned it over in my hands, studying it. He'd visited one of the Halloween costume stores that popped up on every street corner in the last month. They were like those tax places in March with the people dressed up like the Statue of Liberty, waving signs. I tossed the mask at Jesse. It bounced off his side, sending him into a renewed fit of laughter. My cheeks flushed as I walked out of the bathroom. Angry, no. Embarrassed, yes. But also elated. Jesse was here. Back in my room, I dressed for school and waited. It only took a moment. The door creaked open, and a now soggy-looking werewolf head poked through the open door, speaking in a mocking voice. Tay, I'm gonna get you. You better get your towel. I threw a shoe at the head. It bounced off the door frame and rolled aside as Jesse entered the room. You've never had good aim, Jesse teased. When did you get here? I asked. 15 minutes ago. Surprised? A little. Scared? You wish. I hear there's a furry little demon roaming the hills near here. Little, huh. And yeah, it's out there. Think you can handle it? Do I have a choice? I laughed. Yeah, I might be able to help, Jesse said with a half smile. You? I asked. I figured you were stopping by on your way to another assignment with your parents. Jesse shook his head. Nope. Since I turned 18, I make my own rules. I go where I want to. Huh. Your parents would never. My parents nothing. I'm an adult now. A knock on the door interrupted our banter. Can we come in? Asked the sweetest voice beside my mom's, even kinder than Mrs. Riley. Into my room walked Aunt Mary and Uncle Matt. Quite the pair. Aunt Mary had tanned skin and was taller than my uncle, whose skin was as pale as the moon 2 nights ago. My aunt was part Native American, though I'd never asked which tribe. I shook my head at Jesse and mouthed his line about making his own rules. Uncle Matt snorted. Don't worry, Taylor. We overheard Jesse's little comment about going where he wants to. We'll see if he can pay for that Jeep on his own. Uncle Matt nodded toward the window. Jesse blushed. Did you drive here? I asked. Yeah, Dad and Mom drove separate, Jesse explained. The Jeep is outside. We're off to New York. I have research to do at a museum up there, Uncle Matt explained. But Jesse is going to stick around and help banish that HowlSage. I stood from the bed. Seriously? I exclaimed, sounding like a little boy who'd found out he was going to Disneyland. Far more enthusiasm than I should reveal to Jesse. It'd go right to his already ginormous head. I mean, cool. We wish we could stay longer, my aunt said sweetly, but Matt is urgently needed to look at a sarcophagus. Traces of sage were detected. My uncle sighed. As you know, we've been in Egypt for the past 6 months working in the tomb of a pharaoh. Last week they moved a sarcophagus to New York City for a museum exhibit. I strongly recommended leaving it in Egypt, but was overruled. Money usually wins in these situations. Why leave the artifact in a dusty tomb to study it when you can turn a profit on it in a gallery? So the artifact was leased for the showing. I wished they could stay, but I understood. My uncle was a top archaeologist in the Legion der Dämonenjäger. He had once hunted, but he'd lost half his right leg to a bite from a hellhound in West Virginia. To stop the spread of the venom, his partner removed the lower part of his leg on the spot. At the funeral, my uncle and aunt had asked if I wanted to live with them. But I was still mourning my dad, so I decided to stay at the inn. I heard I might become a hunter, and I wanted revenge on the cloak from the mines, as well as the swamp agent in the area. Part of me wanted to stay because the inn was the last place my dad and I had been together. It was my home. These people were my new family. I wasn't ready to go back to Egypt with them. We only stopped to make sure Jesse arrived as intended. Uncle Matt frowned at my cousin. We've already unloaded his hunting gear. A wry smile crossed Jesse's lips. That's right, little cuz. Me and you, hunting together. I nodded with relief. I wouldn't be alone. Jesse was granted hunter status earlier this week, Uncle Matt said. With the current shortage, they've made exceptions to training requirements, and McGarrett is the best trainer in the society. And I defeated a sand sage. Jesse flashed his bright teeth and flexed his biceps for show. I laughed, and Aunt Mary shook her head. Helped, my son. You were with a very experienced hunter at the time, Uncle Matt said. And don't forget that. Overconfidence on a hunt is deadly dangerous. Uncle Matt's expression was icy serious. Jesse bowed his head. Well, shall we have breakfast? Aunt Mary asked. I'm hungry, I said, hoping to alleviate Uncle Matt's admonishment of Jesse. I need to grab my shoes. We'll see you down there, Uncle Matt said as they left. You banished a sand sage? I asked Jesse. Jesse grinned. Yeah, I helped. Sort of. Still, you fought a demon. What's a sand sage like? Jesse's eyes widened. They can dissipate into sand cyclones and reform. At night, they disguise themselves in cloaks and walk city streets like a normal human. But underneath their costumes, they look like a walking sand sculpture of a man. Killing them is hard. They're common in the Middle East. Sand sage often caused sandstorms. They use them as cover. The larger the sandstorm, the older and more powerful the sand sage. The door opened, and Ike popped in. Hey, Tate! He stopped when he saw Jesse. They'd met a couple times before, and they were opposites. Jesse was athletic and trendy. Ike was a genius and cared nothing for the latest styles. Hey, Ike, I said. Jesse nodded his head. What do you need? I asked. Breakfast is ready. McGarrett wanted me to let you know. Thanks, Sherlock. We could smell it from up here, Jesse said with a laugh. Ike turned and left. I wanted to say something like, go easy on him, but in the end, I didn't. Tay, I'll tell you the rest at breakfast. No, you won't. My hand was up, and I shook my head. Don't mention anything about work in front of Mrs. Riley while we're eating, or you'll get an earful. Okay. Trust me. Later, then. Deal. Now, let's go. I'm starving. Mrs. Riley had tripled her breakfast effort with my family in town. There were 7 types of pancakes, 4 syrups, eggs, bacon, sausage, biscuits, hash browns, and yogurt parfaits. It was better than any breakfast buffet I'd ever been to. After breakfast, everyone walked my aunt and uncle out. They walked Jesse to his Jeep and had a few private moments with their son, where he nodded a lot. Then my aunt walked over and hugged me. "Now, Taylor, if you need anything, call me," she said. Her eyes gleamed. "Anything, Taylor." I nodded as my throat constricted. "I will." She looked stern. "I will, I promise." "Okay," she hugged me again. "And even though Jesse's older doesn't mean he has better judgment." She glanced at Jesse. "He may need your wisdom too." Wisdom? What did that mean? I was new at this too. Uncle Matt had finished up a few more instructions because he came over next and clapped a hand on my shoulder. "You know, hunts are not simple. Do not be afraid to say no, or I can't." That went against everything any of my sports coaches had ever instructed. "This isn't a game," he said as if reading my mind. Then his face grew dark. "This is life and death, son. Remember that." I nodded. "Yes, sir." Then he smiled and pulled me into a hug. "Well, we'll be off," he said as he opened the door for my aunt. "McGarrett, Mrs. Riley, we're only a few hours north of here. Let us know." "Of course," McGarrett said. "I'll give you updates daily." "Perfect," Uncle Matt said. Then they were gone. Mrs. Riley disappeared back into the inn with McGarrett. "Taylor, come see this," Jesse said. He lifted a tarp at the back of the Jeep, revealing a BMX bike. It was no ordinary race bike. It had rockets attached to either side, and mounted across the handlebars was a computer tablet. "Wow, this is awesome," I said. "My mom customized it for me," he said. "I've been racing BMX since I was little, and this gives me the ability to use that skill in the hunt." Ike was standing in the back seat, studying it. "Are those TK5 rockets?" "Sure are," Jesse said, "but Mom gave them a boost." Ike frowned, but I wasn't sure why. Competition or improper tweaking? The latter he knows all about, I thought wryly. "Hey, you guys want to go into town with me?" Jesse asked. "I promised to continue my education if I could become a hunter." "Yeah, that sounds good," I said. "Perfect. I need to return some books to the library," Ike said. Jesse nodded. "All right, let's go." Ike ran and grabbed his books, while I told McGarrett where we were going. We rode into town with Jesse, and he dropped us off at the public library while he went to register for classes at the local community college. Some old monolithic building that had once been a church housed the library, but the legend said it had belonged to the Freemasons many decades ago. Ike was still verifying any facts about that. The building had several reading nooks and a winding staircase that led to a balcony and more books. That's where I usually went, up high, where I could watch what was going on. Ike tucked himself into a nook with a stack as he determined what to check out. The library had limited him to a few dozen books, not because he didn't return them, but for his safety, they said. Big bags of books, stairs, clumsiness. Trees covered in flaming orange leaves stood out against the gray sky as Ike and I exited the library. Ike's backpack overflowed with books. Jesse waited by his blue Jeep. Even though it was less than 50 degrees outside, he had the top down. Ike complained about being cold a couple of times on the drive back, but eventually he ducked beneath the collar of his jacket like a hermit crab into its shell. Doing so made him seem even more like a little kid, and the gap between Jesse and Ike grew. It accentuated the things that Jesse didn't like about Ike. At the inn, we hopped out of the Jeep. The door to the workshop opened. "Great, you're back," said Mrs. Riley. "Come on in." A tray of sandwiches and a pitcher of lemonade sat on a table. "Boys, you'll need to hurry up and eat." It pained her to mention speed and eating in the same sentence. She was not a fast food type of person. "McGarrett is out investigating a lead. When he gets back, he wants to leave." Her eyebrows wrinkled with worry. She didn't like it when her husband headed out alone. "Taylor, let's have a peek at your leg." She looked over my ankle and smiled. "Much better." I glanced at the skin. It was purple, but when she pressed her fingers against it, there was no pain. My hunting clothes hung on the wall near the bathroom. I changed, and Ike helped me restock my utility belt with supplies, including new blood balloons made of heavier latex than the last batch. Ike helped me get the J-pack in place on my back. The workshop door opened, but it wasn't McGarrett. "You look like a halfling version of Batman," Jesse teased as he entered, tapping on my helmet. "And you look like a giant Hershey's Kiss in that tinfoil getup of yours," I fired back, studying his silver suit. Jesse laughed and touched his suit. "Sweet. Girls love unwrapping chocolate." He pressed a yellow band on his wrist, and he slowly started to disappear from the bottom up. An invisible force tugged on my arm, and then a shove from the opposite direction. "Cool, right?" Jesse's voice asked from behind me. "More techie goodness from the society. I'm only supposed to use it when hunting, but I must admit, I've snuck out in it a few times. Nothing serious, a few pranks." Wham! A solid punch struck my chest armor. "Quite the abs you have, Tay," Jesse mocked, knowing I wore body armor. Suddenly, his silver form appeared again, this time sitting in a chair several feet away. "Nice," I said. "The quick moves are mine. The suit is my mom's invention. It's even made of real silver, so if that beastie decides to bite into me, it'll be his last." "Yours too," I reminded him. "Maybe," he muttered. "The silver thing is a myth," Ike added, "and your death will depend on the stage of the venom's lethality and damage from the bite. If it's after the full moon, then you'll be destined to transform into a werewolf at the next full moon." We turned and looked at Ike. I had forgotten he was in the room. It was easy to do with Jesse here. My cousin's personality dominated. Jesse took out a small weapon and slipped it over his wrist. "Mini grappling hook," he said. "Has a wire attached to the end of the grapple." "That's cool," I said. Jesse laughed. "So McGarrett's still not here?" "Here I am," McGarrett said. He was wearing a gray jacket over the top, a yellow and black flannel shirt, and a black stocking cap atop his head. He looked like a bumblebee lumberjack. "Are you both ready? We need to head out and get in place before it gets dark." "Why aren't we flying?" I asked. "We only have one J-Pack, and I want you to arrive together," McGarrett said. "Plus, you're—" He took a deep breath, then looked at me, and then at Jesse. "I've reached a conclusion, one I don't like, but I think it's the quickest way to bring an end to the hunt. The two of you will head into the mine tunnels tonight. We must find the HowlSage den and see what the cloak is preparing for." A surge of excitement came over me. I'd been asking to enter the mines. "The chief and I determined that someone has been entering and exiting recently through entrance 8 of the mine. We believe it could be the cloak," McGarrett said. The map on the wall centered on the mines. "There were plenty of signs of goblin activity, but no tracks for the HowlSage as far as we could determine. But that doesn't mean it isn't also using the entrance." Ike tapped the keyboard, and a digitized map of tunnels overlaid the mountainside. McGarrett looked at me for a moment, his expression cautious. "Taylor's dad was able to produce these maps through his exploration of the tunnels." McGarrett paused. "They are incomplete, but they will be essential to our quest to banish the HowlSage. I'm ever more convinced that the person in the cloak is highly strategic, but I'm yet unsure what they are orchestrating. If you come across the HowlSage, we will take the opportunity to banish it, but this mission is more than only finding and vanquishing the HowlSage. It's about learning what we are up against. We must learn who is beneath the cloak. Are you both ready?" Jesse and I nodded. "Then, let's pray." When we finished, we headed for the car. Ike started to follow, but McGarrett waved him off. "I need you to stay here and monitor the town. See if there are any anomalies in the tracking system." Ike frowned, started to speak, and then stopped. Staring at his gray slip-on shoes, he turned and stalked toward the large display of glowing screens. Jesse punched my arm. "Come on, Tay, we've got a HowlSage to destroy." A few minutes later, we slid into the back seat of McGarrett's Rolls and were off. A crooked sign read Entrance 8 and hung from a rusty chain holding the gate closed. Jesse activated his invisibility as we approached. I could still hear his breathing and footsteps across the graveled expanse. The gate appeared to open on its own, but it was Jesse. We slipped through and approached our next obstacle, a massive metal door secured over the large entrance. The door was 12 feet high and 8 feet wide. Someone had cut through the padlock a long time ago, and together Jesse and I wrenched the door open. It groaned, the noise echoing off the cliff face into the woods. If the HowlSage, Cloak, or any goblins were near, they knew we were coming now. A blast of cold, putrid-smelling air struck us. "We're on the right track," Jesse said. The tunnel looked narrow and confining. It made me anxious. So far, I'd flown freely above the town. This would be my first hunting endeavor into a mountain. the first time I'd be constricted by solid rock walls. We relied on our night vision to follow the rusted metal rails running through the mine, leading us deeper and deeper. The coldness did not abate. "Taylor, do you read me?" McGarrett asked over my earpiece. "Yes." "Ike placed several motion sensors in your pack. He'd like you to set one before you reach the first branch in the tunnel," McGarrett said. Ike was always thinking of information collection. I squatted down and pulled off the pack. Inside were a dozen sensing devices. I took out one and switched it on, then placed it where the tunnel wall met the floor. McGarrett instructed me to click a black button, and 5 small spikes drove into the rock. "Deployed," I said. "We've got its signal," McGarrett relayed. "I'm tracking you, so your movement is creating the map, but the motion sensors will alert us to trespassers." Jesse and I continued into the tunnel and soon came to a fork. "I'll take this way," Jesse said. I nodded. McGarrett came over our earpieces. "Ike will stay on Taylor, and I'll stay on Jesse." "Right," I said, a bit surprised McGarrett was letting us split up. "I'm on," Ike said, regarding my earpiece. Something hit my fist, and I realized it was Jesse's fist bumping. "See you in a bit," he said. Then his footsteps echoed away. I suddenly felt alone. Even with Ike watching my camera feed, physically, I was by myself. No one could sweep in and back me up, which was why McGarrett had resisted me going into the tunnels before. Maybe the HowlSage's aggressiveness was relaxing his concern for caution, which seemed counterintuitive. But McGarrett wanted to end this hunt quickly before an infestation claimed Ashley Meadows. 15 minutes passed before Ike broke in over my earpiece. "Taylor, Jesse's under attack. Go back." I turned and sprinted toward Jesse's tunnel. "What's happening?" "It's not the HowlSage. It's goblins." A howl echoed from behind me, freezing me in my tracks. The hair on the back of my neck stood on end as the howl came again, closer. I twisted around, and barreling toward me on all fours was the HowlSage. I raised my sword and swiped, diving toward the tunnel wall. My shoulder slammed into the rock, and the beast flew through the spot where I'd stood. The HowlSage scrambled to a stop and turned to face me. I leapt to my feet and held my blade ready. The demon snarled, its muzzle shaking violently, pointed ears on end. Its eyes glowed under my night vision goggles. My breath was shallow and quick as fear flooded my mind like an angry torrent. "Taylor, hold your ground," Ike said over the earpiece. "Jesse's on his way." The HowlSage seemed to assess the threat I posed. I swung my saber in an arc. It bared its white fangs. Then it charged. I spun and slashed my blade across the demon, dragging the blade across the HowlSage's shoulder. The demon growled. I turned. The HowlSage rounded on me. A massive paw came down across my chest, knocking me backward. The solid stone did nothing to cushion my fall. My grip on the weapon slipped. There was barely time to swing it back up as the HowlSage darted for me, paw raised, claws ready to tear across my face. My sword blade cut across the HowlSage's muzzle. The demon jerked back, its jaws wide. Saliva splattered on the ground, exploding into bright green flames. What happens if the saliva lands on me? I had no time to consider further, as the HowlSage's clawed foot thrust forward. I deflected its attack with my forearm. "Taylor, use a blood bomb," Ike instructed. My free hand went for my belt, but I didn't find the distraction weapons. "I don't have any." "I must have... Jesse's here," Ike said. The HowlSage jumped into the air. The wolf-like beast twisted to face my ally. For some reason, Jesse was visible, his pirate-like curved blades out. Jesse shifted his stance and turned the weapon. The HowlSage straightened, then stepped back. Jesse moved forward, his sword swinging. Suddenly, the HowlSage leapt over me, dashing into the dark tunnel. Jesse charged forward, not stopping to pull me up. Instead, he shouted over his shoulder, "Comin', cuz?" He went invisible and disappeared into the darkness. I pushed myself up when scratching and screeching echoed from the direction Jesse had come. Goblins. Dozens of glowing eyes rushed toward me. I chased after Jesse. 15 minutes passed, and the goblins were still in pursuit. Yet I hadn't caught Jesse. Ike gave me directions to keep after him, but Jesse was fast. I was out of breath, and my legs ached when Ike shouted, "Halt!" A deep chasm ran across the tunnel with an old rickety mining bridge stretching to the other side. Something silver caught my eye ahead. Jesse was visible. He was standing near the middle of the trestle, looking down. "I lost it," Jesse shouted. "It leapt off. It must be 50 feet or more down. Do you have your grapple? No, I dropped my pack back in the tunnel, fighting the goblin horde. The horde was still coming for us. Do you have yours? I do. I reached for my pack. My pack! It's gone! My pack is gone! I must have dropped it when the HowlSage attacked. A chorus of hissing echoed in the direction from where we'd come. Jesse, the goblins, they're coming! Jesse stared into the chasm, then turned and started for me. His footsteps were measured and careful as he crossed the unsteady structure. We'll take them, he said with confidence as he stepped onto solid ground again. He had his sword before him. I need to banish something tonight. How do we kill them? I asked Ike. Take off their heads, was his simple reply. It'll be enough to get you out of there, but it won't banish them. You don't have the right weapons. We waited for a minute, but the goblins didn't appear. Where are they? I asked. I heard them. Jesse shrugged. We're the hunters. Let's go after them. Ike, do you have a location on the goblins? I asked. No, the sensor you placed is near the entrance, he said. There was a brief silence. When you get your pack, can you place a few more motion sensors, especially where you are right now? I grunted. Ike didn't think much of the distance we had covered in the chase. I'd have to go back to where the HowlSage had attacked, come back to the trestle, and then still walk back out. Ike, that'll take a long time, I said. Sailor, McGarrett cut in. We need the coverage of the mines. By the time we completed the sensor planting, we'd placed a dozen beacons throughout mine number 8. We'd had no new sightings of the HowlSage or goblins, and it was nearly midnight. Boys, it was a good hunt. Come on back. I'll meet you at the entrance, McGarrett said. It's time to rest. We'll go at it again tomorrow. Self-inflicted disappointment hung over me. With the HowlSage and the Cloak working so closely together, we're going to need to change our tactics a bit, McGarrett said. It's clear whoever is beneath that cloak is no amateur. They've studied demonic arts and seem to have a strategy. They're after something, and our presence has not caught them off guard, McGarrett explained. The presence of so many goblins worries me. We'll have to be even more vigilant. McGarrett dismissed us, and Jesse and I swung by the dining hall, where Mrs. Riley had left out a tray of snacks. Jesse and I sat for a while, reliving our brief encounter and the hunt. I told him about the first night. I also asked him about the sand sage, but he yawned and said, Another night.